Because of the nature of how much information, bits of knowledge we would be exposed to at any given time, we have to have ways to filter that down, or we would be so utterly overwhelmed that we would curl up in the fetal position and we would never have evolved as a species. We would have died off. So this is an evolutionary mechanism. That is what the conscious mind does. It can take in just a fraction of what the unconscious and subconscious minds can take in. But in this world, we have these coping mechanisms, and while they're very efficient for many, many things, this is also vastly limiting. Not only do we do this to the external world around us, the real reason I'm teaching you this right now is because we do this to ourselves. We're running a simulation of the original thing. That's what happens when information feeds through. We put it into boxes, we give it cute little names, we make it nice and orderly, and it makes us feel more comfortable about how little we actually fucking know. We're going to talk about why we fall asleep in the dream. I'm a why guy. Not everyone here cares, but for those of you that are why people, I think it's important to understand what we're dealing with, what we're up against. So, a little bit of knowledge here as well as experience. Our brains are incredibly intelligent at optimizing our decision-making processes for efficiency. They do this by making things unconscious as soon as possible. Everyone's familiar with how habits work, right? You hear 21 days, you hear 40 days, whatever, doesn't really matter. But it's this notion that if you do something consciously, it's just a few weeks before you won't have to consciously try to do it, right? It will become unconscious. This is the mechanism I'm describing. It's how habits work, and it's how the overall operating system of the subconscious and the unconscious mind work. This is the stuff that I would nerd out on before you guys knew who I was. To me, this was as fascinating and enthralling as wealth is now many years ago. I wanted to know everything about how the mind works, and not just the conscious mind, but the unconscious. That was what most fascinated me because it drives all of our behavior, yet we don't know shit about it. So this feature is both our greatest blessing as a species. It is literally the reason why dolphins aren't at the top of the animal kingdom. Humans are. But that same feature is our greatest hindrance as spiritual beings. The universe is incredibly complex. How many of you have ever taken too much of a psychedelic and you felt like you were about to go into psychosis? Let me explain to you how psychedelics work. They remove the governor, the limiter from our brains that typically filter everything out there from overwhelming us. And we have this limiter that only allows us to take in a fraction of all the bits of information in front of us between all of our five senses that we could take in. When you take psychedelics, it lifts that limiter. That is why you gain expanded access to things that were right there the whole fucking time, right? That's why when you get the download, you're like, it's so fucking simple. Why didn't I see it before? The answer is love. That's not rocket science. It's right fucking there. It's just that your conscious mind, your filtering system, wasn't letting you see it. It doesn't mean it wasn't there. You didn't create that. You're not God. It was there the whole time. So I think it's helpful to understand that that is how psychedelics work. So that is part of why I wanted people to experience microdosing, those that already do that, for this call. Because it's one thing to describe it. It's another to experience it, right? And so we go throughout life, and because of the nature of how much information, bits of knowledge we would be exposed to at any given time, we have to have ways to filter that down, or we would be so utterly overwhelmed that we would curl up in the fetal position and we would never have evolved as a species. We would have died off. So this is an evolutionary mechanism. Does that make sense? That is what the conscious mind does. It can take in just a fraction of what the unconscious and subconscious minds can take in. And so, because of this complexity that we're up against, we cannot possibly make accurate meaning of everything around us. So instead, this is another evolutionary feature, we oversimplify the world. We take things in, it hits our eyes like a projector, feeds to our brains, and we assign it a tag. We put it in a bucket. We file it in a cabinet. We make these bite-sized projections of actual objective reality around us. And we reduce all of creation, into little stories or frames of meaning. And this mechanism is called heuristic bias, for those of you who are interested in better understanding yourself. And while this is very efficient for coping with all possibilities existing simultaneously at all times, for those of you who have ever had an experience of oneness, you fully transcended this limiter. That is there all the time. We're just not meant to have access to that all the time because you wouldn't be able to do shit, nor would you need to, because what is. You're in it. There's no more timelines. There's no more doing. But in this world, we have these coping mechanisms. And while they're very efficient for many, many things, this is also vastly limiting. And not only do we do this to the external world around us, the real reason I'm teaching you this right now is because we do this to ourselves. Hopefully you guys are following me here. We sort the entirety of our expression into boxes or folders. And we don't do it consciously. We don't sit down when we're 18 and go, all right, I'm an adult now. I can buy cigarettes. Let me sit down and write out a bullet point list of how I'm going to describe myself throughout life. We don't do that. It's these micro little moments. Someone says something where, oh, I like that. Oh, we try something on. Oh, I'm this. We have a traumatic experience. Oh, I'm going to carry this. All these little micro things, and they add up over time. And after a while, we end up walking around and we're completely detached from reality. We are no longer seeing what is. We are no longer seeing what is out there, and we're no longer seeing what is when we look in the mirror. We are seeing the boxes, the projections, the lazy meaning that we ascribed to describe ourselves. And paradoxically, the very faculties that allow us to survive and function in the 3D world, which is this mechanism that I'm explaining, we wouldn't be able to function without it. And this is what, for example, me and Jax have a theory that this is what people who are, for example, schizophrenic are experiencing. Maybe they're not as crazy as society has said. Maybe they have access. They don't have that limiter that most of us have on. They're seeing things. They have access to all that is, and look what it did to them. They can't function in the world. We write them off. We lock them up. That is a clear example of what I'm describing. So it has benefit. It allows us to survive. But at the same time, these faculties stand in the way of us thriving, surviving, thriving. Those are at odds with one another. Fight or flight, rest and digest. Sympathetic, parasympathetic. We want to be over here. This is where creation exists. We often get stuck over here. If we're only operating from these faculties, we're running a simulation of the original thing. That's what happens when information feeds through. We put it into boxes, we give it cute little names, we make it nice and orderly, and it makes us feel more comfortable about how little we actually fucking know. And because of how we're wired in this way, we get stuck. We get stuck in our stories. We get stuck in our representations. We get stuck in our oversimplifications of the world and of ourselves. That's why I had you guys do that little exercise question. How would you describe yourself? Right? So it's a very quick and easy way to see we all do it. Oh, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a mom. But yes and no, right? It's not you're a liar. No, you are that. But who's the you that is that? Is that actually you or is that you? I don't know if you're picking up what I'm putting down. We get stuck in our limitations, and we get stuck in the neat and tidy boxes that we attempt to fit all of creation inside of as we move throughout our lives. And it doesn't take long before we can no longer see what is right in front of us. What is. No distortions, no projections, no biases, no trying to name. There is what is, and then there's trying to describe or fit what is into your existing maps of meaning. Very different things. So instead, we see what we want to be. We see what we think is, which are totally different. And I want to clarify, like, these filtering mechanisms, they offer so much value and they support us as a species. This isn't a message of like, kill the ego, these types of messages. This single filtering mechanism is how the human race has got to where it is in 2024. And I know many of you may be like, yeah, well, we're fucked up. Yes and no. It depends on the perspective you want to look at it through. We've created self-driving cars, advanced medicine, space travel. Those probably aren't the best analogies for this group because I'll leave it at that. But we've created a lot of beautiful things. Use insert blank, okay? Don't get caught up. The Earth's flat and medicine was better back then. Okay, I get it. But the overuse of these faculties have also led us to a point where we're seriously disconnected from what is. So even if you're not very woo-woo, and today's message sounds like I completely lost my mind on my trip to Hawaii, which actually, in a literal sense, is true, you likely desire to create a more fulfilling, abundant life for yourself with more freedom and peace, yes? I think everyone on this call would hopefully say yes to that. And today's conversation is speaking directly to the heart of that matter. This next level that you're praying for, this next level that you've been envisioning, it's right fucking here. That is why I just explained that to you. We have grown to think of things in linear time and space, and thus we default into thinking things are outside of us because we've put ourselves in a box. I am this, I am not that. I am here, therefore I'm not there. I have this, therefore I don't have this yet. And that is I won't say completely incorrect model. I will call it a limiting model. It isn't the whole truth. And so today I'm going to show you other perspectives to that. And you might just find that you're not behind or stuck like you've been telling yourself. So let's talk a little bit about breaking through the glass ceiling. As we dive deeper into this topic of breaking through ceilings and manifesting new realities, it's crucial that you understand that in the quantum realm, meaning the metaphysical, the non-physical, as well as all other dimensions pretty much, other than the material third dimension, there is no linear time. This is just a fact of physics. There's linear time in this dimension when we're playing the human game. It's one of the things that we're up against. If you want a very good experiential demonstration of that, watch the movie Interstellar. It's just a fact of physics. Pro tip, take some LSD like I did and you'll never look at that movie the same again. So this next level that you're thinking is so far away is right in front of your face as we speak. The difference, the problem, if you want to think of it as that, is not a distance problem. It is a radio frequency problem. What sunglass shades do you have on? There isn't necessarily distance that needs to be traveled. There's a different perspective that needs to be used to see what is already right there. And that is a complete paradigm shift from what the self-help space sells us. Spoken from someone who is in the self-help space and has been for 12 years. Read all the books, understand the philosophies. They're great, but they exist in the mind, therefore they have limitations. So this next level, it's already here. It's not outside of you. It's not waiting for you to become more worthy. It's not asking you to earn it. You just can't see it. It's really that simple. So why can't you see it? Because, you ready? You're stuck inside of an identity right now. And these folders we put ourselves in give us a long rap sheet of what we can now observe in reality. It's like an efficient plug and play of, if I plug in this CD, I'm this identity. Here's the long list of pros. Here's the long list of cons. You'll naturally be able to notice, pay attention, and thrive at certain things when you're wearing a certain identity, and you'll naturally have certain weaknesses. It's just like a video game. Not every character is good at everything, right? This is the same. Identities are exactly like your avatar in the video game because guess what? That is quite literally your avatar in this video game. Imagine that. And while I cannot speak to exactly what that current identity is for each of you on this call, I can say with 100% certainty that each of us are currently stuck inside of an identity right now, myself included. This is part of the human experience. And if you understand what I just walked us through about our wiring, unless you lobotomize yourself, this is part of what you're up against. And the only thing standing in between where you are in this moment and that desired reality is the current box or maybe set of boxes that you have unconsciously placed yourself inside of. And coincidentally, and here's the kicker, you can no longer see outside of. So we place ourselves in this box. It's neat, efficient, helps us function easier in the world, but at a cost. It's just like convenience when we do things involving the government that are more convenient, like scanning your arm to pay for groceries instead of a debit card. Sounds great, right? It'll be real convenient. But what do you sacrifice by doing that? Some would say your soul. Same thing here. It's convenient, but then we get stuck. There are trade-offs. We can't see outside of it. And one of the best quotes to probably summarize this, and one that I'm always keeping top of mind and have carried with me for many years, is that it is hard to see the picture when you're in the frame. And if you really sit with that visually, picture yourself, a little speck of paint on a canvas, and you're in the frame, you're not going to be able to see the picture. You have to zoom out. Another J-Griff quote. You have to be able to third-party view yourself and look down. And that requires you to loosen the fucking grip on the identity.